Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm assuming some other people will come along and join us. Just while everybody is coming on board and getting your sound correct, we'll start off with our usual joke. A horse walks into a bar. He walks up to the bartender and says, "Give me a beer." The bartender is stunned. So he heads to the back of the bar to speak with the owner. "Hey boss," he says, "there's a horse in the bar asking for a beer." The bar owner pauses for a second, then replies, "Well then give him one, but charge him double. Horses don't know the price of a beer." So the bartender heads back out front and hands the horse a beer. "You know," says the barkeep, "we don't get many horses around here." To which the horse replies, "At these prices, I'm not surprised." Okay, look, my name's Terry Gifford. I'm the founder of Cabenet Accounting. We've been assisting external examiners in the examination of legal practice trust accounts for over 9 years now, and we're continuing that assistance this year with the 2022 External Examiners Toolbox. We thought we'd put this webinar together so that we could hear from John Mitchell, who is the former Chief Trust Account Supervisor of the New South Wales Law Society and now working for an external examiner doing law practice examination. John will be sharing his insights and lessons for external examiners working with law firms to complete the annual trust account examination review and report. We'll kick off with a 30-minute interview, followed by 15 minutes of open Q&A. If you've got any questions throughout the interview, please enter them in the Q&A section of the meeting chat, and then we'll get on to those at the end. To get started, let me welcome John Mitchell. John has led the implementation of regulation and examination processes and worked with Cabinet in the development of the EE Toolbox. He provides a unique perspective as both a supervisory regulator and an EE for law firms. I've worked with John for over 15 years and value his advice and insight into the legal profession regulating legislation, which is still the largest piece of legislation on the statute books. I think it is. I'm not sure these days, but I'm pretty sure it is. Hi, John. It's great to have you here. Let's get into the questions we have for you.
Thanks, Terry. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. We do go back a long way. That's quite correct. And your jokes certainly have not improved.
Oh, good. Thanks. John, as you know, people are wondering. They're saying, Terry looks only 24, 25, and John, you look a bit older. So that's it. John, you've experienced as working as a trust account investigator and in conducting a review of law firms to assist an external examiner. How do you compare the roles?
Terry, the biggest difference is the fact that as a trust account investigator, I simply was responsible to the directive of the designated local regulatory authority, that is the Law Society of New South Wales. They told me what to do, how to do it, and what records to keep. That the role was defined. However, as an assistant to an external examiner, I need to maintain standards expected by the professional body of which David is a member. The professional bodies determine that the role of an external examiner is a compliance-based audit. What does that mean? And the examiner is to meet the standards set by the professional body. Also, as the external examiner, I am required, David is required to meet the standards expected by the designated local regulatory authority of each jurisdiction. These standards are published each year on the designated local regulatory authority, the Law Society's website, and they are published as instructions to the external examiner 2022, external examiner's update 2022, and the external examiner's checklist. That, as I see it, sets the standard. A document that is not listed but which was published in the past, which I continue to use as the external examiner, is known as the external examiner's worksheet. which is also included in the Cabenet Toolbox. Each one of these sheets in the Toolbox and the External Examiner's checklist includes total number of transactions looked at. Now, this concerns me as to whether my samples meet the requirements of the professional body. Also, we can't forget the law practice. As a trust account investigator, under powers invested by the actor, they didn't count that much. We were there. These days, they want the best job done at the cheapest price with no breaches reported whatsoever. So the expectation of an audit by the professional body places a higher onus on the maintenance of records, which detail the work completed and support the work that has been completed. Such thing as sample sizes places an onus on the external examiner, which is not on the trust account investigator.
Given that there's an obvious, sort of friction there between professional bodies and what is sort of expected of the external examiner, can you elaborate on those sort of frictions? I know that we had a situation where a particular accounting firm sort of gave up on external examinations because they regarded or the Law Society didn't regard this as an audit, and they did. So what's that friction there between the two bodies?
That was a good win for us too. We picked up a few big firms on that one. Yeah. But the requirement that a breach in a selected sample is reported is not on the trust account investigator. So if I select a sample, so I look at 12 trial balances, one of those trial balances is 1 day late in that period. As an external examiner, I'm required to report that as a breach. Now that might be the only breach that is reported through and the law practices don't like getting breaches, that's clear. But as an external examiner, as a trust account investigator, I just look at it because all I've got to do is satisfy myself that the records generally comply. Well, as an external examiner, if I select one and there is one breach there, I've got to notify it. And the law practices don't like it.
So we can say quite clearly it's not an audit. It's you forming an opinion, which is then reported in the external examiner's report.
Correct.
Interesting.
And completing such processes as designated by the professional bodies and the Law Society. So we're sort of at a catch-22, are we?
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? You do deemed if you do and you do. Anyway,
yeah, that's right.
Sorry. Well, is there a difference in how manual records and computerised records are handled through the external examination process? This is particularly important for us because we're the suppliers of computerised records. So is there that difference, between manual records? Are you more on your guard with manual records than computerised records in the external examination?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, manual records definitely are a bigger challenge to us than computer-based records. But sorry. The computer-based records, when you look at the documents that are produced, you've got the checklist. And that sets our criteria. That sets what we're required to do. And if you just take the sample of the receipt section of the checklist, I ask yourself, it really is based on manual records. It's not based on computer records at all because, we're quite a large percentage of firms are cloud-based now, correct?
Yep.
The old checklist came in because manual records, you always had, people made mistakes. They, just wouldn't fill in fields. Computer-based, we've got compulsory fields. You can't bypass the field. But one of the problems with PC-based software was that the programmers, not to mention you, Terry, but the programmers would come out, would update something and turn off the receipt printing format and forget to turn it back on again.
Yeah,
So for
well,
6 months of the year,
Mm.
the receipts that were printed didn't comply.
Mm.
The issue I've got these days is that the checklist, I asked the question, do I have to do 20 receipts on a cloud-based computing system to satisfy that the records comply?
No. Yeah,
That's
it's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of the law practice's time. It's a waste of everybody's time.
correct.
I can tell you, look, if your software's certified, then it's gone through that process of checking. Now, that's important just to bring that up, that the law practice is using a certified piece of software which is current. There are a heck of a lot of law practices out there using very, very old systems that were compliant many, many years ago, but aren't compliant now. So the external examiner should check the serial number, if you like to think of it, or the latest version of that particular
And that's
piece.
one of, like some of the firms out there are still using KG data.
Yeah,
KG data.
KG
Now,
data.
that was an examined software, but it hasn't been updated for yonks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I wasn't born, John. I wasn't born when that was.
No, KG data, that's right.
Just on that, with the toolbox, if you answer the very first question, has the computer software used by the law practice been certified? If you answer yes to that, it knocks out something like about 285 possible questions that you would need to turn off. So, that's important to make sure that we're looking at certified software. Okay, how important is monthly reconciliations and reporting in keeping a law practice honest?
Absolutely critical. The importance of monthly bank reconciliations and just keeping on top of your records, like the 15 working day rule for month end and the 5-day posting rule are absolutely critical. And there's a certain amount of relief when you do your reconciliation review, and the law practice has not, complies with those month-end balancing requirements, because they're on top of the records. I used to say to the sole practitioners joining, how long should a error in your trust accounts take to be rectified? And the answer is quite clearly 15 days after month end. But 6 months, when you see external examiners reports coming in saying that a debit balance existed in the trust records for 6 months, well, you've got to question who's actually looking at these records as an external examiner.
Well, that's one of the things that's what I call the elephant in the examination, is the number of law practices carrying adjustments on their bank reconciliation. It is clear from our knowledge of when a law practice can't work out an issue with balancing their reconciliation, they enter an adjustment. These can range from transposition errors to stealing trust funds. Just recently in the O'Brien case, $15 million was stolen by a process of lapping and adjustments and outright lying. So how important is it to follow through on adjustments appearing on bank reconciliations?
Terry, my answer to that would be, if you don't, make sure your insurance premiums are up to date, because it's that sort of issue that just little things, you just got to do it. You've got to cite the bank statement. It's so easy for bookkeepers to balance the records just by simply putting an unpresented check in, correct? You and I both know it's so easy to balance a bank rec. And if they're not looking at them, practitioners are not looking at them, and external examiners do not satisfy themselves as to, what these things represent. And that's one of the criticisms. Like in the old day when I learned accounting, it used to be unpresented checks and outstanding deposits. Or items, debit balances, in cash book, not in bank statement, that sort of stuff. These days you've got a myriad of explanations of what these things are, and the external examiner just simply must roll up their sleeves and go into each and every one of them.
Well, they were the old chestnuts, you know, the reconciliation within 15 working days, trial balances not being done on time, dormant balances that were in the trust trial balance, which we'll talk about a bit later, John.
Yep.
One of the things that we've done is we've brought up the inspector's gadget, the dashboard. How important is that one? I know you know about it, and look, while you're talking about the dashboard, I'll bring it up for the attendees to have a look at. But basically, it's a tool that you can use within the toolbox.
Like one of the greatest improvements in software ever was the introduction of the investigator gadget, as we referred to it. It basically gives you the overview of the law practice, month-end reports. As a trust account investigator, when I started many years ago, I was required to sit down, get all these arts lever folders and find the last page of the trial balance and then find the last page of the cash book. And, it was just, every accountant has done it, has been there. The toolkit, or what do you call it, investigator gadget.
The investigator's gadget
presents this sheet to you here. And it's so you look at it, all you've then got to do is say, okay, in regard to the bank balance, does that bank balance agree with the bank statement balance? Yes or no? It's then got cash book balances, and the easiest thing about this system is if you go to the bottom of the screen, you click on month-end cash book there, and there's your cash book. So you can actually sit there and tick and look at you and say, yes, Terry's got it right. I've tested the program. I'm okay with that. Then we go down and we look at the bank reconciliation and we see the adjusting items in the bank rec. And we can see on that one, oh, yeah, beauty, there's none. Oh, hang on, add outstanding deposits, $1,000. Well, then as an external examiner, I would satisfy myself that that 1,000 has been banked in the next month. So once I then look at that, I then do my job from the screen. I go back up into the cash book. If you move it back up, Terry.
Oh, sorry.
I go back up to the there it is there, the cash book, and I can review the cash book, sitting at the desk reviewing it. And then I see an entry there, a round amount for a payment of $10,000. I click on the ledger and it takes me straight to the ledger. I can sit there, I can review the ledger, and at that point I can then say, oh, I might want to cite the barrister's bill. None of this rubbish about right into the law practice saying, please send me PDF copies of your month-end reports in cash receipts, cash payments, trust journals, zot. No, it's all there. And then once I've done all that, I review it, I come back, and then I've got to write to the law practice again, and I say to them, in regard to these ledgers here, can you please provide the following source records? So I stand by the comment that the external examiner's toolkit or the investigator gadget dashboard, absolutely brilliant and really brings the external examiner back, enables me to do my job efficiently.
Yep. Well, that's one of the reasons that we did develop it, John, because you put the pressure on me to make sure that we had something like that. Now I know
the amazing thing about it, Terry, is there's only one other software system that has introduced it.
Right. Well, we won't mention them.
Efforts,
we won't mention them. Sorry.
No, we won't mention them. They're very nameless, but there is one other. It's just an aid to the external examiner. That
Well,
it's excellent. Carry on.
What's happening with a lot of law practices? They're giving access rights to the external examiner. So, look, you as an external examiner, you have that right to request a sign-on permission to get into a law practice's accounting system, online system. Just be aware that sometimes the vendor of the software will only provide one sign-in for a period of time so that you can go into it. And some vendors are actually charging the law practices additional user rights to that system. So you can get a lot of.
This only costs the external examiner or the law $110, doesn't it?
Well, the whole toolbox, yeah, is $110.
$110.
So just be aware as an external examiner, you've got that right to request to be able to sign in and see. And look, you're looking for things like ledger prints. You're looking for things like month-end reporting. You're looking for things in this instance. One of the fields that we've got here is number of transactions greater than 5 days. So it can indicate to you how many transactions that are breachable. In this instance, we've got 1 transaction which is breachable. We have 8 breachable here. So look for the tools that are available from the software vendors, and if we keep putting pressure on them, all software vendors will do that.
I would like to see all examiner software systems carry something like this, and the only recommendation for change on yours, Terry, would be date required. The date the month-end reports are required to be produced, because as an external examiner, I've got to insert a line and I've got to run through and find out what 15 days after month-end is.
And I know it's difficult for you to work out dates.
Oh, it's terrible. Anyway.
Okay. Just on the fact of ledgers, I think one of the important things is we all often get asked, can we get a dump of every ledger of the law practice that has had a trust account for the year? That's a complete waste of time. If I can just say to external examiners, getting a print dump, don't even ask, because look, for cabinet ones, we're never going to do that. What I'm just going to suggest to us is basically asking for individual trust accounts and ask for the ledgers on that if they can't provide a toolbox like we have here. Okay, look, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Just before you go, Terry, if you buy the toolkit and you aren't on Cabinet, so you haven't got the beautiful ledgers and all that, then included in the external examiner's toolkit is the external examiner's worksheet, which I would encourage all external examiners to be aware of, because that enables you to build the Cabinet, the overview of month-end reports.
It's a spreadsheet that's available for you to download out of the toolbox. So let me just get rid of this sharing. I'll stop sharing. I've done that. John, some of the other critical external examiners functions include review of bank statements. We've talked about review of trust cash receipts, dates and date banked. I think, look, this is becoming less and less, but any cash that's received by the law practice needs to be scrutinised. When did they receive the cash and when did they bank the cash? Review selected periods of receipts for accuracy of information, paying particular attention to received from field. A lot of the instances that we have is that law practices don't put where they're receiving their funds from. They're just defaulting to the account name, which is not right. We need to know who we're receiving a cash from or funds from. Transferring monies to control money investment accounts. In the past, as you know, a law practice needed to transfer it into a trust account, then from a trust account to a control money account, whereas now they can go straight into a control money account. Just be careful with making sure that we've got the names right in that chain of monies flowing from trust accounts to control monies, or from control monies back to trust accounts. Look.
Well, having said that, Terry, I'm actually doing an external examination at the moment for a long-standing law practice, and you look at the trust receipt, and there's no client name shown on the trust receipt. Somewhere, what they're saying is, oh well, it's addressed to, Terry Gifford. Well, hang on, if you receive the money from the Commonwealth Bank, you send the receipt to the Commonwealth Bank. So that sort of issue, it's you've still got to look at it. Yes, you've still got to look at it, but in regard to the fields, the received from field bank check is rubbish.
Yep.
The other big one is the PEXA, no BSB and account number.
That's a frightening one.
And
because
PEXA, no EFT number.
Workspace numbers, workspace numbers are very important. John, we're running out of time, so I'll keep going. Is it important this is I love this one. Is it important for the examiner to confirm source records, for example, requesting original checks from a bank, given that we're trying to get rid of checks? Should the external examiner be going out and asking the bank for a copy of the original cheque?
I haven't decided to pay cheque for years. In actual fact, of the numbers that we do, there's very few cheques drawn these days. Quite amazing. I rely on the advice that is published by the designated Law Society, which basically says you don't have to.
Right. Okay.
So it's in there. If the examiner is satisfied that the source records substantiate the payments, then the examiner may determine that the society of paid cheques is not required.
Okay.
I also apply that to the external examiner's checklist, where they ask us, have you confirmed the bank statement balance with the ADI? We're going backwards, aren't we?
Yep. Okay.
Like you've got a bank statement in front of you. But anyway, carry on.
Okay. We won't go into that one. Are law practices required to report trust irregularities? This is an issue which is close to my heart, in as much as that, and look, I'll comment on this a little bit later, but I know you've got some opinions about a 154. It seems that if a ledger goes out of credit and it goes into overdraw, it is a responsibility of the external examiner to report it, not the law practice. What's your reading of that, John?
Mate, I wish someone would make a clear line view on this one, because one of the issues, the last thing you want is issues between the examiner and the law practice. And on your report, you actually publish on the month at the end of each month 154 notifications. That is, where trust accounts have been overdrawn. And you say to the law practice, "Oh, can you give us the email that you sent to the trust account department notifying them of the overdraw?" No, we don't have to do that. But what? Sorry, you do. But there seems to be, whether it's coming from the Law Society, whether it's coming from external examiners, that there is now not a requirement on a law practice to notify in regard to an irregularity. It hasn't been changed. The legislation is still there. It's 154. I've got it here. It hasn't changed. The law practice is required to notify.
So one of the questions that the external examiner should ask is, have you reported this overdraw to the law society or the regulatory body? Okay.
Well, in my external examiner assurance questions these days, I have amended that, and I now ask them for the notification to the law society. Yes.
Okay. Finally, there's a new paragraph in the update which deserves a mention. The examiner is required to review the list of dormant balances. Now, if we're defining a dormant balance, it's really one that has a balance on it over 12 months in the trial balance. And to find that, look, you should be looking at your trial balance, which has a last activity date on it. And if there is one over 12 months, that's a dormant balance. If the examiner is not satisfied or concerned with the law practice procedure, the matter should be noted in paragraph 7. So they're suggesting that if you do find a dormant balance and you're not satisfied that it's being handled correctly, you should report it in paragraph 7, except to the extent that the overdraw trust ledger has not been rectified in a timely manner, or 2, that the overdraw trust ledger represents a major breakdown in the accounting for trust monies. Now, that's a ripper. And 3, the law practice has benefited without reasonable excuse. So they're the only ones that you need to report on paragraph 7. I'm not sure, John. I reckon that you should be looking to report everything and asking the law practice, why is this sitting in my trust trial balance over 12 months? Because it shouldn't be there. The legislation is quite clear. Well, there shouldn't be any money in there.
Old balances have been a perennial problem for years. You've got 2 issues. Yeah, that's right. The old balance, it really is up to the law practice to define. When I just write off to the law practice and say, look, these are in excess of 12 months old, why are they still there? Now, if they say the matter has not, it's a deposit held on a continuing matter, or it's an estate matter that's before the court. Full stop, end of story. You accept the explanation, you tick the box, and you move on.
Move on. Yeah.
I find it. I don't know what the issue on dormant balances is really. The old days, yes. Yeah, if someone misappropriated money from a trust account, they wouldn't finalise the matter. It was simple as that.
Yep.
Employees would not finalise the matter if they'd misappropriated money.
Yep.
So old balances were an indication that there could be a problem, and they still are. But you can only rely on the law practice to notify you what they are. Yeah, you can look at the file if you want. And then if you form that opinion, then notify the Law Society. But what they're saying to you is you only got to notify of dormant balances if they fit those three.
Right.
And there's very few of them that would do that. Yes, the overdrawn balances. Now, this seems to imply to me that the law practice is now notifying the external examiner, not the regulator.
Which is wrong.
So I can't handle that one. No. To me, the law practice, if there's an irregularity, notifies all the overdrawn, all the irregularities are given to the external examiner, who then forms an opinion as to whether to qualify that report based on those three guidelines issued by by the Law Society.
Right. Okay. Breaking news for those of you who haven't read it yet, but look, you probably have. Finally, the Trust Account Department has become aware of instances of banks unilaterally ceasing business arrangements with a law practice. Such occurrences include closure of the trust bank account and payment to the law practice of the balances in the account. The banks are not stating their reason, but we believe it is in response to recommendations of the Banking Royal Commission. Just what we need, the Banking Royal Commission hiding up problems of law practices trust accounts. Look, if what they're suggesting is the law practice or the external examiner should check to see if the bank has changed in the period of reporting, and then take appropriate steps to find out why. I know there's a lot of instances where law practices combine or they buy another practice and so on. That's not a problem, but a bank just unilaterally closing a trust account ledger on a law practice would be a red flag to me. I don't know. It just seems to. But anyway, look, that's there. That's for you.
Do they draw a check and give it to the law practice, or do they draw a check and give it to the Law Society? What do they do? No,
they give it to the law practice. Give it to the law practice. So they just sign a check for the balance and say, here it is. Go away. I don't want to know you.
Isn't it?
None of
my firms change bank accounts, mate.
I know one of them has, John. There's a good reason for it. Well, look, that's as far as I wanted to go. Thanks for that. Now, can we have a look and see if there's any Q&As here? I'm just wondering. I'm just bringing up some Q&As. If there's any Q&As in the little box here. We've got a couple here. Okay, I've got from John, how does the toolbox gather the information? Is the law practice required to utilise the software to maintenance of the trust account? No. Look, the toolkit is broken up into two pieces. There's 1 to 400 and something odd questions that you answer yes, 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 or no, yes or no, yes or no. In every instance, if you answer no to the question, it will be a breach, and that breach will appear on the side of that question. The first 32 questions should be given to your law practice for them to fill out to say, do they hold trust monies? Do they hold control monies and so on? That will then work out how many questions you need to follow through with when, as an external examiner, you go into the system to have a look at it. At the end of the day, once you've done all the questions or as many of the questions as you possibly can, you can then display your working papers. It will then highlight those where you've answered no and that are breaches, which you can then copy directly, just click on and copy directly to your external examiner's report at the Law Society. So the toolkit itself is just basically those questions. The external examiner's gadget, what we're calling, is if you're a cabinet client. Now, if you're a cabinet client, we have that information there, so we present it to you in a format which you can use. Does the law firm need to use the cabinet software for the EE to use the toolbox? No, as I said, the inspector's gadget is if you're a cabinet client, you will get that. If they're not a cabinet client, you still get all of the questions, the 400 odd questions. You get the worksheet, you get the working papers and so on. We also have the ability for your law practice to upload documents to a secure space for you, so that you can ask your law practice to provide bank statements, any reports or any ledger printouts in a PDF format that you can they can load up into the toolbox for you. And then you can view those documents online. So we've eliminated the, that requirement for you to go to your law practice. You can get them to use the toolbox to save that information.
And Terry, the other advantage of it is the copy and paste at the end.
Yep.
Don't forget that. Yeah.
You could just you don't have to reprint the you don't have to reprint the the worksheets and then retype them out. You just click on the breach and then you paste it into the external examiner's report. We've got a registration for the toolbox. We can do that. Look, I think that's about all, John, that we've got. If there's any other questions, you certainly can send them off to us, cabinet.com.au, support@cabinet.com.au. And John, thanks very much for that. That was great, and hopefully we can do a couple more like this if we get some queries, maybe for law practices. Maybe we do a seminar for law practices.
Mate, you never know. You never know. I can now go and relax. I've been on edge all day. This is the first one I've done since 2017, but that's all right. I enjoyed it, and thanks very much for inviting me back.
No, that's okay. And look, thanks for the people behind the scenes. Thanks, Caitlin, for doing that. And I'm sorry about me dropping out, but I'll blame Malcolm Turnbull for that. That's all I can say. Well, that's all I want to say. We're not going to ask you any of those questions about the cash rate, John. So you can relax now. Good. All right. Well, thanks very much. And look, we do have a recording of this. We will send it out to you in due course. And we will talk to everybody soon. Thanks very much for attending. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Terry. Bye.